the ages, history has been altered by word of mouth and the misrepresentation of those who might not have been present when some of the world's most significant events took place. Channelers Barry and Connie Strohm bring through the spirits of those who actually witnessed or took part in these historical events and lets them tell their stories in their own words. Welcome to Channeling History. And now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie Strohm.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Channeling History. We're the only show where we speak to the souls that made things happen from the other side. And we're brought to you each week on the Parax Radio Network. I'm Barry Strohm, your host, and I will be doing the channeling tonight.
And I would like to thank you all for tuning in to our show this evening as well. I'm Connie Strohm, your co-host. Tonight, we will be interviewing one of the most famous individuals in religious history, Abraham. 3 major religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, based their foundations upon his life and teachings. We're brought to you each week on the Parax Radio Network, so please tell your friends about us so we can expand our educational class here.
We always try to give a disclaimer, and it's going to be important tonight because there's a lot of people who are not going to believe what the messages are going to be. Every time that we get into a religious category, there's people like that. So the opinions or statements voiced on our show are the channeled words of the spirits and do not necessarily reflect our opinions, those of Parax Networks, or of our sponsor.
Last week, we had a very interesting show in which we channeled President George Bush. He gave us insight into many subjects, including the fall of the Soviet Union, the Kennedy assassination, and Watergate. If you missed the show, it's well worth listening to.
Now, all of our shows are available on our YouTube channel. It's in my name, Barry Strohm. Or if you'd like to download them, go to Podomatic.com and just search Channeling History. You can hear us on Spotify, Audible, Pandora, iTunes, and all the other platforms as well. So we welcome your questions tonight through the chat room. While we do have questions prepared for our guests, we welcome your participation and look forward to your questions. Now, when we begin channeling tonight, Connie will ask the questions and I'll answer them in the words of the Spirit. But before we channel, Connie always says a prayer of protection. So Connie, say the prayer and we'll begin to channel with Abraham.
God, please grant us your wisdom and protection. Grant us the knowledge that we can handle and keep us safe from all things that will harm us. Keep the messages positive and pure love. Keep us safe from our egos. We ask these things in the light of the seen, the unseen, and the honesty of God.
Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Abraham. Most of the information about him is found in the Old Testament. So I'm going to try to give you an outline of his life as it is presented in the Gospels, and we'll ask him some questions. We'll see how it compares. So the Gospels state Abraham was born in the city of Ur, located about 200 miles south of what is now Baghdad in Iraq, and it was approximately 2000 BC. He had 2 brothers, Nahor and Haran. Haran was the father of Lot. Now, the entire family moves to a place called Haran, where Abraham's father dies, supposedly at the age of 205 years. Now, according to the Gospels, when Abraham is 75, he moves to Canaan with his wife Sarai. Famine in Canaan drives the family to Egypt. Family returns to Canaan. God predicts to Abraham a promise of land and descendants. Now his wife proved to be incapable of having children to fulfill the promise of the descendants that God had given. So she offers Abraham her maidservant, Hagar, for the purpose of bearing a son. She bears a son named Ishmael, with Abram being the father. Now, according to the Gospels, Abram is 86 when Ishmael is born. Now, when Abraham is 99, he receives a covenant of the pieces from God, and circumcision is said to be the sign. God proclaims that he'll give Sarah a child, and right now she's 90 years old. So Abraham has all males in his family, including himself, circumcised. Magically, in a year, Sarah gives birth to Isaac. Now, Sarah has Abraham sent Hagar and Ishmael away. That was the handmaid, and Ishmael was her son by Abraham. Ishmael marries a woman in Egypt and becomes the founder of the Arab nations eventually. As a test of faith, God tells Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac. As Abraham prepares to sacrifice his son, God stops him. Sarah passes. Abraham takes on another wife and has 6 more sons. Abraham dies at the tender age of 175 years. So we're going to ask a couple questions. Connie, let's get started with it.
Okay, good evening, Abraham, and thank you for joining us. Would you like to begin with a message?
Yes, I would. I want to thank you for allowing me to come through tonight. It certainly has been a long time since I've talked to people. I lived in a very early time. It was a time where many people were polytheists, meaning they worshiped many different gods. I did it myself when I was young. It was a difficult time. It was a time where there was still a lot of violence. It was a time where basically God had not been spoken of. I tried to do my best to lead people. I had a lot of psychic abilities. God would come to me, his angels would come to me, and he would give me messages. And he would tell me what he expected of me, what he wanted me to do. And I tried to fulfill, to the best of my knowledge, what he asked of me. As you're going to find out, a lot of the information about my life has been distorted. I never realized that almost 4,000 years later, people would actually care about my life. Many of the world religions have changed many times over since I lived. Many changes have come over the world. I know I could conceive of nothing that was taking place in the present day when I walked the earth. We were simply worried about finding water, food, resources for our sheep to eat. Our focus was not getting involved in violent wars, trying to basically just stay alive in those days. So I thank you, Connie. I know that you've got some questions for me.
I do, and I'm anxiously awaiting your answers. But before we start, the Gospels tell us that you lived to a remarkable age of 175 years, and many of the miracles surrounding your life were because of age. Can you clarify how old you were at your time of passing?
We did not live longer lives in those days. It was a very difficult time. If anything, our lives were shorter. Many of our children died in childbirth. It was a very, very difficult time. We didn't have organized calendars. Nobody was really keeping track of things. Age was just something you tried to obtain in my time. The concept of me living to such an extreme age is something that was made up long after my passing. Keep in mind, we're talking about 2000 BC, in that range. There was not a system where people took notes as I was speaking. We tried to do our best. It was only after our passing, and actually many years afterwards, that people tried to write down events that had taken place in our lives. All of the religious documents were doctored through the years. That's just a fact. People thought they were doing us favors. In my time, people that obtained an old age were revered. The people that would write about my life would think if they extended my age to almost 200 years, that I would be more highly revered. So our lifespans were actually shorter than yours today, if that answers your question.
I would say so. Thank you. Were you a descendant of Noah?
No, that is something that somebody made up. As many of the spirits that you've spoken to in the past have told you, Noah and the ark did not really exist. There were people that saved their flocks and their families from great floods by having large arks or ships. But no, I'm not a descendant of Noah.
Okay. And I suspect that I know the answer to the next question, but was your father, Tara, 130 years old when you were born?
No, no, I'm afraid that's a large exaggeration.
Okay. I think you've probably answered this question, but you might want to expand on it. Why are the ages so exaggerated in the Gospels?
Well, as I said, as we obtained old age, we were more revered by the people around us. The people thought that we had greater knowledge for having lived all those years. It wasn't that we were gaining knowledge through education, but we were gaining knowledge through life.
Yeah.
And the more years that you lived, the more people respected us.
Yeah. Approximately what year were you born?
I was born around 2000 BC.
Okay. Have you lived any lifetimes since that of Abraham?
I actually came back at the time when Jesus walked the earth. I was one of his servants. I wasn't one of the close disciples, but I did choose to come back to be with him. Once I passed and went to the other side, I truly understood what was taking place with God and what he wanted us to do. So when we realized that he was going to come back in the form of Jesus, I did do a life plan that accompanied him on that task.
Okay. In what general area were you born?
I was born in the town of Ur. And as Barry said in the beginning, that's approximately 200 miles south of where Baghdad is situated today.
Okay. Could you tell us about your parents?
My parents had quite a few sheep. They had herdsmen working for them. They had quite a few servants. They would trade. They would do many things that were required. They were considered wealthy in their time, not extremely wealthy, but they had a very, very comfortable life. They both worshipped many idols. As I said, it was a time where polytheism was practiced. It was a time really before the concept of a single God was spoken in public.
Okay. How old were you when you left your hometown of Ur in Mesopotamia?
I was about 25 years old.
Why did you leave?
My father felt that we could have better living conditions if we left that town. Ur was a trading center in those days, and he felt that he wanted to be more active trading. I had been having dreams. In those dreams, I was told that that we should be relocating our family into an area that was different from where we were at the time.
Were you married when you left Ur?
Yes, I had married Sari. She was a beautiful woman. we we married when we were 18 and 19 years old. We were very, very happy, and she certainly accompanied me as we traveled to Haran.
Yeah. Okay. Why did you go to Haran, which is in ancient Turkey, rather than another place?
It was on the trade routes of the time. It was a very prosperous area. It was a place where we felt that we would be able to live in peace. There was not a lot of fighting going on in that area at the time, and it was fairly stable. So we thought it would be better if we relocated our crops, or not our crops, but our herds and our family and servants to that area.
Okay. The distance between Ur and Haran is approximately 700 miles. How long did it take you to travel that distance?
We didn't rush. It was a casual trip, so it took us probably around 4 months.
Okay, why did you end up leaving Haran?
I was having dreams that I should be living. I should take my family to the area of Canaan. That is the area of Judea today. He was saying that if we went there, or my dreams were telling me if we went there that we'd be very happy, that it would be a place that my future would be very bright. It would be a good place to raise our family.
How old were you when you left Haran?
As I remember, I was probably around 28, 29 years old.
Okay, then you traveled from Haran to Canaan, approximately 250 miles. How long did that take?
Once again, you didn't go in a straight line in those days, and you followed natural pathways and trade routes. But I believe it took us about 2 months to get to Canaan.
Okay, then you left Canaan and went to Egypt. Why did you leave Canaan?
There was a great drought came to the area. It was not as fertile an area as as the places we had stayed on the Euphrates River. It was an area that was very susceptible to harsh weather. Egypt was known as a place to have great croplands. It was a place where you could live. The one problem was that you had to have the agreement of the pharaohs to allow you to stay in Egypt. But in my dreams, I was told that we would be able to find suitable living conditions there. So we did travel to Egypt with the family.
How old were you when you left Canaan?
I'm saying around 30, 32 years of age. Keep in mind, this age was not too important to us. It was something that just happened. You tried to live as many years as you could. We didn't have a really detailed calendar at the time. We lived very, very simple lives. So I was in my prime. It was the middle time of our lives. We were very happy in Canaan. We would not have left if it had not been for the serious weather conditions.
Yeah. Tell us about your time in Egypt.
Well, we traveled to Egypt. My wife was an extremely beautiful woman. We had not had any children at the time. And when we arrived in Egypt, the soldiers of the Pharaoh took us to him. He asked us why we should be allowed to stay there, and commented on how beautiful my wife was and how he would welcome her into his harem. That he offered that if I allowed Sarah to enter his harem, that we would be allowed to stay and prosper in Egypt. I did not tell him the truth. I told him that she was my sister, and that if that was the condition of our safety, that was what we would have to do. So, sadly, I did allow her to do what was necessary, that we could stay there.
Interesting. Why did the Pharaoh let you leave?
It was a time, as soon as she entered the harem, that there was a great pestilence came upon his family. His children were becoming sick. He was having bad luck in many, many other areas of his life. He was being threatened with some uprisings. In those days, the pharaohs would have seers that would give them advice. And he was given the advice that perhaps it had something to do with the fact that he had accepted Sarai into his harem. He called me to come to him, and he said that she had not as yet been fully accepted, but that his seers were telling him that we needed to be ejected from the country so that the pestilence would end and the sickness. He was very forceful. He gave us a limited amount of time to lead the country. God had told me that he wanted us to return to Canaan, but I was not going to leave without my wife at that time. He solved the problem by creating problems for the Pharaoh, and he arranged that the advice given to him would be to have us leave his country. So we packed up and moved back to Canaan, which God assured me that if we returned there, that we would be able to live in relative peace and prosperity.
How old were you when that happened?
I think we were in Egypt less than a year. We did not stay there long.
Okay.
So that would have been probably, I was in midlife, so I would say that I was probably 35, 36 when we returned.
Again, and how did you receive these messages from God? Was it strictly him coming to you in your dreams?
I would receive messages in different ways. Mostly, I would receive his messages in dreams. But I would go into areas and I would do a deep meditation. I would fast, and there were times that I would see visions in my fasting. Angels would come to me and speak. They would tell me that I had much to do. They would tell me that God wanted me to return to the land of Canaan. They would tell me that if I did, that we would prosper, that the people there would come to know me and respect me and follow me. He wanted me, the messages I was receiving were telling me that he wanted me to go and speak of a single God. He wanted me to tell those people that the worshiping of idols was not the way of things. He wanted me to speak of many things. Now keep in mind that these were new messages. These were not messages that people had spoken before. Yes, there were certain messengers that had been sent back. They had had some good results in speaking of a single God, but it was not something that was really spoken that much in public. Many feared that if they alienated the deities that were represented by the idols, that they would suffer the wrath of all those gods. I would see them in many ways, but God never appeared to me in form. I would hear voices in my head. There would be times that I would see the forms of what I believed to be angels, but they were never the clear, distinct forms, as if I had another human standing next to me. So I received messages in many, many different ways from God.
Yeah. Could you tell us more about your wife, Sarah?
She was a beautiful woman. I loved her. We tried to have children. We tried very hard to have children. God told me that I would have many descendants, and we had trouble understanding why he was not blessing us with a child, especially with a male child that would carry on my leadership roles. Keep in mind, in those days, that the rights of women were pretty much non-existent. They were meant to raise families in those days. Sarah was very, very intelligent. We would discuss many, many things. I would tell her of my visions of the one God, and she became a very firm believer in that. She was a wonderful wife.
Yeah. How many years did you try to have children?
We tried probably for 20 years to have children. We finally realized that it was not going to work out for us. We thought that we had done something to alienate God, that we were not being blessed with children. But it was probably close to 20 years.
Yeah. Is it true that Sarah offered her handmaiden Hagar so that she could have a child with her?
Yes, God had told us that we would have many descendants and that many, many people would follow my words and my teachings in the future. He told us that we would be establishing essentially a country, a way of life, a religion. She knew the importance that somebody would come forward and that we needed a male child to come forward and assume leadership after my time of passing. In those days, it was not uncommon for a woman that could not have children, especially if she had a bit of wealth and had servants, to offer her closest handmaiden to her husband so that that handmaiden could bear children for him. It was an offer that she made, and at the time, I did not see that there was any other real possibility. So I did take her into our household, and she did have a child by me. All right, let's take a moment here for a short break, and we'll be back with more questions.
Don't go away. Channeling History will return right after these brief messages.
In order for the light to shine so brightly, the darkness must be present. Tune in every Monday at 10 o'clock. The Dark Sun Rising on the Para-X Radio Network.
Hi, this is Marla Brooks from Stirring the Cauldron. Thursdays are a great night on the Para-X Radio Network. We start off the evening with Journey into the Light, Chapter 3, with your hosts, Psychic Little T and Tabby Cat Gash at 7 p.m. Eastern. Then, on the first and third Thursdays of the month at 8 p.m., it's Tango and Friends, hosted by Bruce Tango. And on the alternate Thursdays at 8 p.m., tune in to Stirring the Cauldron, the archive podcast. Every week at 9 p.m. Eastern, join me on Stirring the Cauldron Live. And then at 10 p.m., stick around for New Aeon Now with Lily Alley, Davron Michaels, and Christine Matza. Finally, to round out the night, join Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz on the Paranormal Encounters podcast. All this every Thursday, right here on Para-X.
Hello, everyone. Barry Strohm here. For the past years, I've been using my gift of spirit communication to bring you the words of many historic and holy spirits. I recently finished my 8th book and possibly most important book, Message of God for a Modern World. The book contains 60 messages of God that I've personally channeled. It's a superb, non-denominational devotional that will bring you a new understanding of the afterlife and how to bring happiness following God's simple words. The soft cover and ebook are available on Amazon, and personalized copies are available on my website, barrystrohm.com. If you follow these messages, you will truly understand God's plan for all of us.
Welcome back to Channeling History. Now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie Strohm.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Connie, let's have some more questions.
Okay, after Hagar became pregnant, why did she and Sarah become enemies?
I think that Sarah became jealous of the fact that she was bearing my child. It had to be very difficult for her to look at it, knowing that she couldn't do it herself.
Okay, Hagar gave birth to Ishmael. How old were you when Ishmael was born, approximately?
At that point, I was probably around 40 years old. As I say, we never really kept track of our ages. It was just a normal way of things. We'd been trying for 20 years for Sarah to get to have it on my child. So I would say that I was in the vicinity of 39, 40 years old.
Okay. Did God speak with Hagar?
Yes, actually he did. He gave her a message to tell her that Ishmael was going to be a great man, that he would become a leader, and that he would also help form countries, and that people would follow him. He told her not to worry. He told her that he would protect the two of them and that they would be guided. So I know that it gave Hagar great confidence to be hearing from God, because she did get those messages on her own in her own dreams.
So what happened to your son Ishmael?
They eventually moved back towards Egypt. He grew up to be a strong man, a respected person. He migrated. He had followers of his own. He wound up moving close to the city of Mecca. He became the leader of the Arab world in those days. He is actually very, very much respected in the Islamic faith. And Ishmael became a very, very strong leader.
That's wonderful. Did God tell you to get circumcised?
Yes. He came to me in a vision. He said that he wanted all of the males to sacrifice something as an indicator of what he went through on the cross. He said that he would arrange for Sarah to have a child of our own. I did have all of the males in our group circumcised. And in a year, Sarah did indeed become pregnant and have a son.
And how old was Sarah when she got pregnant?
Sarah was in her middle 40s when she got pregnant. That was very unusual for the times. So I think that is the reason that her age was so exaggerated in later writings.
Yeah. So after Sarah gave birth to Isaac, what happened to Hagar and Ishmael?
Well, after Sarah did give birth to a son, she came to me and asked that I would have Hagar and Ishmael leave. I did give them provisions, and that was when they left our family and headed to Egypt. It was Sarah really that was behind me asking her to leave the family.
Yeah. What did God tell you about Isaac?
When Isaac was about 12 years old, God came to me in a vision, and he said that he wanted me to sacrifice him. I asked God why that was necessary. And his answer was that he had to be assured that I would truly be his servant and follow his commands. I was heartbroken, but I truly believed in God, and I truly thought that I needed to do all that I could to follow his commands. Yeah. So I took Isaac up on the mountain. I had the wood of sacrifice, and I was fully prepared to sacrifice him for our God. As I was making final preparations, I had another vision from God, and he said to me, Abraham, you have proven to me that you are capable, that you will live up to my commands. Now that I know that you can truly be trusted in the most important matters, I'm going to assure that you will be a great leader and that you will have many follow you in the future. It was a test. God wanted to know just how committed I was to following his words. I proved to him that I would follow his words to the point of creating an act that would be the worst thing that could happen in my life. God needs to know that individuals are committed to following him. In those days, I guess it just took a little bit stronger action. Today, he truly understands that very few people follow him. And as we watch from over here, we all find that very sad.
Yeah. So what happened to Isaac after that? What was his future?
After that, Isaac grew strong. He became a leader of men. He helped lead the communities in Canaan. He helped develop a religion that was to become the Jewish faith. He provided guidance. He communicated with the angels as well. He became a very, very strong individual. And he lived up to the expectations that God told me that he would do.
Okay, your name is mentioned in the Quran 69 times. Why are you so honored in the Islamic faith?
It is said that my son Ishmael helped formulate the Arabs so that at the time, far in the future, that Muhammad could return and truly lay the foundation of the Islamic faith. He moved to the center of the Arab world. He helped formulate tribal structures. He was not as successful as we had wished in bringing about the religion of the one God at that time, but he laid a foundation. He laid a foundation of strength that the followers of Muhammad respected and incorporated into the Quran, the Hadith. He was a beginning. All good stories have to have a beginning. Muhammad came much later and provided the ending to his beginning.
You're linked to the originating of the shrine in Mecca. Is that accurate?
My son created a well in the vicinity of Mecca. He helped to build the city, and he helped to bring tribes to the area. The Kaaba in Mecca was possibly the result of some of his actions, but it would not have been his direct intervention.
Okay. Is Muhammad one of your descendants?
Yes. Ishmael married and had many children. Muhammad is actually a distant descendant of Ishmael, and that would also make him a distant descendant of me.
Okay, you're considered the founder of Judaism. Why are you so considered?
Most of my activities centered around what is now the Judea area. I built shrines to God. I built places to worship him. I laid a foundation that would become the Jewish faith. I laid a foundation for writings that would be adapted by the Jewish faith. I laid the foundations for the basic Christian religion in the area. Since I was so devoted to the area of Canaan, my work became specifically oriented towards many that lived in the area. Keep in mind, my writings were some of the earliest available. Before me, there was nothing. I laid the foundation. I laid a foundation that could be adapted to all three of the great world religions. God was very thorough in the messages that he gave me. It was only through the messages of God that I could have been so successful in accomplishing what I did.
Okay. As was mentioned earlier, you were born into polytheism. How did you come to believe in the one God?
Through the visions, through the angels, God came to me and told me that he was the supreme being, that there were no other gods before him, and that he was the only God. I accepted what he told me. I proved that I truly believed it when he asked me to sacrifice my son. And as a reward, he gave me great powers to lead others.
Yeah. What was the covenant that you had with God?
That if I would lead individuals to God, that I would speak of the one God, that he would give me very many descendants, and that he would give me the powers to create communities that would serve him.
Did God really destroy Sodom and Gomorrah?
Sodom and Gomorrah were communities that absolutely did not adapt to following God's words. Now, the Gospels say that it was the true actions of God that did this. What took place was a huge earthquake and volcanic eruptions that destroyed the city. The volcanic eruptions were what the ancients conceived of as fire and brimstone. Did God arrange for the volcanic eruptions? Probably. It was a natural reaction that he allowed to happen. It was directed towards communities that had refused to accept the word of the one God. There have been many instances through history that natural calamities have occurred that have cleansed areas of individuals that did not believe or would not accept the words of God. God does not intervene directly. He will allow natural occurrences to affect the evolution of humans. The ancients saw fit to have God directly destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. I guess it is a fine line between him allowing natural occurrences to take place, natural occurrences of great destruction. He did warn my family. He told Lot that there was going to be an occurrence that would take place, and he did warn them not to watch the occurrence, that it was going to be great violence towards the city.
What happened to Lot's wife?
Lot's wife was warned not to watch the destruction of the city. When a volcano erupts, there is a great flow of temperature. It incinerates anything that is in sight. Lot's wife walked out of the cave in order to observe what was taking place. she got caught up in that very high temperature that goes with a volcanic eruption, and her body was actually incinerated to ash. The ancients referred to it as being a tower of salt, but it wasn't. It was a natural incineration that took place from what was happening with the volcanic eruption.
Are you surprised at how you were revered after almost 4,000 years having elapsed?
It never occurred to me in life that my name would even be mentioned for so many years after my passing. It never occurred to me that what we were doing had such lasting effect. Even though God told us that we would be bringing, that our words would affect the multitudes, never in my life did I think that I was laying a foundation for something that would last for so many years. Our ancient writings were rare and very difficult. We did not have paper. We didn't have pens. We didn't have computers. Our scribes would preserve words in the most primitive and basic fashion. There would be rolls, there would be scrolls, there would be tablets. But I never thought that what we were doing would have such a lasting effect or would lay the foundations of the three greatest religions in the world.
It is amazing. Abraham, have you reincarnated any time since you walked the world as Abraham?
Yes, I answered that earlier. I did. I came back as a servant of Jesus.
Forgive me. I'm old. Do you have a final message for us?
Yes. I want to truly thank you for allowing me to come through. As I stated earlier, in my wildest dreams, I would have never guessed the success that my life had. God told me that if I followed his words, I would affect multitudes. It never dawned on me that I would be laying the foundations of faith that would affect billions of people. I laid a similar foundation for all faiths. Those that followed me laid foundations that separated those faiths. I wish that all of the world religions would understand that in service of the one God, all are created equal. Many of the words written about me are very hard to believe and to understand. That is the work of those that followed me. I tried to lay simple foundations, and those foundations did lead multitudes to follow my words. So I thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I hope that you will try to follow my words. I hope that you will try to follow God's words. And I hope that you will learn to love and coexist. So thank you for allowing me to come through tonight. Should you ever wish to speak with me again, I would be happy to do so.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Next week, we are going to do something that is going to be spectacular. We are going to interview the soul of Judas Iscariot, the individual that betrayed Jesus. We are going to also have the spirit of St. Peter with us, and he's going to lay the background information as to what really happened that night on the Mount of Olives when Jesus was betrayed and what followed the crucifixion. I never thought that we would be able to speak with Judas. There's going to be some information come out that you are going to find very, very hard to believe. So tell your friends about the show next week. I guarantee that many of you, or if not all of you, are going to be very, very surprised at the information that we're going to discuss. Okay, you can submit questions, suggestions for future guests through our emails. That's channelinghistoryontparax@gmail.com. channelinghistoryontparax@gmail.com. My 8th book, Messages of God for a Modern World, is now available on Amazon. It's available on Kindle for download. We're working on making an audiobook available for it. It is simply a compilation of the words of God. It's not me. I'm incapable of these wonderful messages. But there's 60 of them in the book. I would strongly recommend that you tell your friends about them, and hopefully that you would support spreading his words. Signed copies of all of my books are available on our website. It's www.barrystrohm.com. If you want a signed copy, that's the only place that you can get them. All of our shows are available on our YouTube channel. It's in my name, Barry Strohm. If you want to download them, go to Podomatic, search Channeling History. So I hope you enjoyed our show tonight. I thought it was pretty special. Next week is going to be amazing. I promise you, do not miss it. You're going to learn something that you never expected. So thank you for listening. Please join us Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on the Parax Radio Network.
And I would also like to thank you all for joining us. I want you all to have a wonderful week. God bless you all.
Thanks for listening to Channeling History. Tune in again next week for another electrifying episode, as we never know who will make an appearance or who will come through the portal. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2020. Our Story Begins by Kevin MacLeod, licensed through Incompetech.com.